I think it is extraordinary that Mark Carney has become the Prime Minister of Canada. He did a terrible job in Britain.
Look inside yourself, Rosemary.
Gang, what's up? Aaron here, Canadian Looney. We've got Andrew Scheer, House Leader of the Conservative Party, with Rosemary Barton on CBC. How is CBC going to try to twist this? Let's take a look and a listen. Rosemary Barton is always an issue. Explain it to me like I'm 5 years old.
Hey, that's something everyone can enjoy.
When I left, there was a Liberal Prime Minister who was making excuses about breaking promises, running massive deficits, costs, crime, chaos were all out of control. And whereas today, we have a Liberal Prime Minister breaking promises, making excuses, running massive deficits with costs, crime, and chaos out of control.
This past week marked Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre's return to Parliament after his summer by-election win. And with the leader back inside the House of Commons, Conservatives are ready to get to work on their priorities for the fall sitting. Poilievre says that includes some reaching across the aisle to work with parties when possible. Andrew Scheer is the Conservative House Leader. Nice to see you.
Great to be here.
You've never been on this program, so I'm delighted to have you.
Well, thanks very much.
Good of you to
invite.
make the time. First week back in the House, and Pierre Poilievre, obviously your boss, the leader back in the House too. And I think a conversation about, yes, how much you're going to oppose the government, but also where you might be able to work together. Mm-hmm. Do you see any common terrain at this stage?
Well, we'll wait and see. I mean, it's great having Pierre back. If you think about it, in the last Parliament, Pierre won the debates on all the big issues. Liberal deficits causing inflation, Liberal catch and release bail laws causing crime and chaos in our streets. Now we see the Liberals having to kind of copy and paste Conservative ideas, or at least Conservative messages on things.
Sure.
And so what we're hopeful for is if they're serious, if they actually will say, okay, we will undo the Liberal laws on bail changes, then obviously we would support that. If they take elements of our platform as it relates to tax relief or getting government out of the way of major projects, then we would support that. But if they try to kind of craft, kind of sew on some of their Liberal ideology that has proven to fail in the past, then obviously we'll have to oppose that and highlight that for Canadians.
And there has been some, I think, copy-paste, and we'll talk about those instances and why they may not make sense for you. But just so I'm understanding, is there a possibility you could support a Liberal budget? Like, how will you determine whether a whole budget is worth supporting? Because in that case, there's a lot of different factors, I would imagine.
Yeah, and of course we will have to wait and see what's in the budget before we make a decision on that.
But you will consider it, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Well,
you'll look at it.
Well, we look at everything before we make a decision as to whether or not we're going to support or oppose. It's how we deal with legislation. That's how we deal with budgets. I will say that I believe it's fair to hold Mark Carney to the standard that he set for himself.
Sure.
And during the campaign, he put in black and white in a written commitment to Canadians that he would cap the deficit at $62 billion. He did that knowing what Trump's tariffs were like, and knowing what the previous Liberal government had done to the economy in terms of inflation and deficits. So that's the commitment that he made to Canadians when he was asking for their vote.
Right.
I think it's fair to hold the government to account for that.
As you know well, though, things have changed. The tariff situation has gotten somewhat worse in terms of sectoral.
Promised he'd fix that.
Yeah,
that for sure. He was the guy you hire in a crisis.
For sure, and he also made a $9 billion commitment in defense. So he's put promises, expensive promises on top of things since that commitment. So if the deficit is, let's say, $100 billion, which I think people are putting on the table as possible, that's far too big for Conservatives.
Come on.
Is the red line the 62 that Mark Carney himself made, or what is the red line for Conservatives in terms of a deficit?
Mm-hmm. Well, I believe that we will really have to go through the budget and make that determination when we can take everything into account.
You're not going to put a red line on it.
I think it's a fair question to ask after we've seen the budget, and we can kind of hold everything up in context. But the context that we believe it's fair to remind Canadians is that, yes, Mark Carney has made some new announcements. He's announced $13 billion for a new housing bureaucracy that still won't build the homes that Canadians need to see home prices come down. So when it comes to just giving him an excuse because he's made some big ticket spending announcements in line with the previous Liberal government, I don't believe that that's what he promised Canadians that he would do during the election campaign. I think it's really important, especially we're just a few months after the election.
Yep.
I believe it's absolutely fair to say you knew what was coming.
Sure.
You knew what the relationship was like with the United States. You knew what the flight of investment in the Canadian economy was already underway, and you made that commitment to Canadians on that deficit number. I think it's fair to hold them to that.
One of the things that we're also going to see in that budget, and yes, we'll see what it looks like, is they're going to separate things, as you know. So it's operational on one side and spending investment on the other. I would suggest that is a way to make things look perhaps rosier. When you see that, do you think that is going to be convincing to Canadians that they are indeed investing in the economy as opposed to chalking up more of a deficit?
Well, we'll have to see what kind of voodoo budgeting Mark Carney actually comes to the House of Commons with, because there already is a well-established accounting principle that provincial and federal governments and private corporations use for what counts as a capital investment and how that is budgeted. That already exists. That already exists in the Canadian budgetary system for decades.
This is modeled after the United Kingdom, from what I understand.
If he's going to bring these types of ideas over, then he has to explain exactly what he means. Because when I go to my banker, if I go to someone who, when I have to renew my mortgage, I can't argue for a lower interest rate, because I can say, well, I've paid off my line of credit with my credit card. It's still debt. It still has to be paid for by Canadian taxpayers, and it still is debt that the Canadian government has to pay the interest on.
Sure.
So you as the taxpayer will spend more and more of your tax dollar just paying interest on debt to bankers and bondholders. That is unsustainable in the long run. That's what caused the inflation and interest rate crisis that we just got through in the Trudeau years. We don't want to see a repeat of that.
Let's talk about an area where it might be easier to find common ground: bail reform. I know that your leader gave a speech this past week about 3 strikes, you're out. That does not seem to be on the table for the government. They are talking about ways to give more resources to provinces to try to help the judicial system run better. What has to be in the bail reform? Because everyone, including the Prime Minister, agrees that changes are needed.
Well, I think it's fair to remind your viewers that it was Liberal changes to the bail system that caused this.
That is fair.
They passed a law that almost kind of forced judges to grant bail as a matter of a default position, even for
They looked for easier options,
even for dangerous and repeat offenders. So what I would love to see from this Liberal government, Sean Fraser voted in favor of all those changes when he was in the Trudeau cabinet. I'd like to see an apology to the Canadian people whose lives were shattered due to violent crime committed by people that this government set free. That would be a great starting point. Secondly, I think if it's a simple reversal of that law, that's obviously something we could support. We've called for that.
So if it doesn't go as far as 3 strikes, you're out, that would still be a step in the right direction.
I think it's fair to say that we will vote in favor of things that are improvements on the status quo.
Right.
And what the Liberals created with their changes from the last Parliament has created a terrible situation. So anything that improves on that, I think it's fair to say we would be open to supporting. Obviously, we'll have to wait and see what's in the legislation. But it is also true that we have put forward common sense ideas to tackle the dangerous and repeat offenders. And this is where we're really focused on, because obviously any kind of crime is awful, and the victims of crime suffer, and their families suffer, and their lives are ruined. When it's committed by someone who the police have already arrested multiple times, there's an extra sense of frustration and devastation that Canadians feel, because they say this crime was avoidable. This could have been prevented if that offender was behind bars longer. That's what our tough 3 strikes and you're out law would do. Mandatory prison time of 10 years for anyone convicted of 3 serious offenses. I think Canadians support that. I believe that's a pragmatic solution to a problem that the Liberals have caused.
Do you see signs that the government is listening to you? Is that conversation happening behind the scenes with you and Stephen McKinnon, for instance, about areas where there might be room to compromise, work together?
Well, it's early days. We did have some success in the spring of improving on some aspects of Liberal legislation. They tried to exempt themselves from the Conflict of Interest in Lobbying Acts with their Bill C-5. We forced those changes in. They accepted that. My counterpart on the government side, we have productive conversations, but we really do have to wait and see. I will say on the general sense of, do I see a willingness for Liberals to embrace conservative ideas? absolutely.
I know, but
they
that's
basically ran on them in the last election
that sort of
campaign,
brings me to the point I was going to make at the beginning. That is like kind of problematic for you too, right? If you see them moving forward on housing, we'll see whether houses get built. Okay, major project office, we'll see whether those projects get done. An LNG pipeline, at least. If they start to embrace these sort of more right of center ideas, to your point, conservative ideas, but done differently. I take the point that you wouldn't do them the same way, and bail is another example. Does that not create a problem for the Conservative Party in terms of distinguishing yourself? Because that's also the thing that you have to do inside the House of Commons.
Well, that's a very interesting question, and I believe what I would say is, first of all, done differently is all the difference in the world. We want to see major projects built because investors want to invest in Canada, that they see a stable and predictable path to get projects approved. That's how it was in Canada for decades up until this Liberal government. Their solution is to give the Prime Minister the power of selective enforcement, and he gets to decide, he gets to pick from a list which projects
Well, the
go
project's
forward.
office does first, and then I guess
he appointed them, he sets the criteria for them, and we don't believe that companies with the right government lobbyist should get the green light. We believe that the criteria should apply to everybody. So that is all the difference in the world. We're not going to restore that confidence in the Canadian economy if companies and investors think that they have to curry favor with a government. And we've already seen that. $50 billion plus have left Canada in direct investment since Mark Carney has been Prime Minister. So he's off to a terrible start.
Yeah, although this office has just been opened, so we'll see.
He promised to move at unimaginable speeds, and what has he done?
Fair
He
enough.
there's over 30 projects on the impact assessment list, and he's plucked 5 of them off, many of which were already started. Or there's nothing new there. There's nothing really groundbreaking. Certainly nothing that's going to get that $50 billion of investment that's fled under his administration.
One last question about the U.S. Ambassador to Canada, Pete Hoekstra, who this past week has said that he's kind of annoyed at the anti-American sentiments by Canadians. He particularly seemed offended by the idea of a trade war, the language that ministers are using. What do you make of those comments that the U.S. ambassador doesn't seem to get that Canadians would be upset, personally upset at what is happening here?
Yeah, I have to. I haven't seen exactly what he has said, so I don't know if I'll respond specifically to that. But I'll just say that anytime a foreign country, no matter what the country is, starts raising the idea of annexation, of course Canadians are going to react negatively to that. And I was so proud, as someone who has been a proud Canadian my whole life and celebrated all that Canada has stood for. It's great to see so many people who up until a few years ago might not have shared in that Canadian pride rallying under the flag. So of course Canadians are going to respond in a patriotic way. We are different, we are distinct. I don't like to define Canada in the negative. I like to define Canada in the positive. We're more than just not being American. We have a proud history. We've been a force for good in the world for over 150 years. We've got this unique story of French and English and First Nations coming together, and I think that's something to be very proud of. And anytime any country out of the blue slaps tariffs or starts raising the specter of annexation, of course Canadians are going to respond positively on the patriotic side, but then also we're going to be upset and at being attacked like that.
We'll leave it there. Mr. Scheer, nice to see you. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
What?
Oh, yeah. All right, gang, so Rosemary Barton knows what's up, but she always argues for the Liberals. It's confusing. Andrew Scheer is a funny guy. He always manages to deal with this legacy media with skill and tact. He's a classy guy. My name's Aaron, Canadian Looney. Come and check out one of the question periods. We cover those live. It's a fun chat room. We always learn something. It's a blast to watch the politics together. That's it. Thank you for watching this video. We'll catch you in the next one. Enjoy the rest of the weekend. Should be a wild week on Parliament Hill coming up. Another crazy one. Pierre's back in the house. Later, gang. Thanks for watching.
What?
Oh, yeah.
I think it is extraordinary that Mark Carney has become the Prime Minister of Canada. He did a terrible job in Britain.